The story begins when Naruki, the aforementioned ugly loser, is summoned to the headmaster's office and is asked to tutor two girls that are considered unstable, but are also geniuses in their respective fields. Rizu is a genius in the fields of math and science and is nicknamed a tiny computer due to being under 5 feet tall and using her massive plot, processing power, I assume, while Fumino, on the other hand, is a genius in the fields of art and literature and is nicknamed Sleeping Beauty due to her tendency to fall asleep during class. Despite being geniuses, both girls are clueless idiots when it comes to other subjects, and because Naruki unfortunately comes from a poor family, he has no choice but to accept this request from the headmaster in exchange for a scholarship. However, he has no idea how he's supposed to tutor two geniuses. Later that day at the park, both girls act a bit cold and distant, and Rizu even tells Naruki that he's just going to abandon them like all their previous tutors before him. But he reassures them that he literally can't afford to give up on them, which makes Fumino suddenly very happy. Once they've opened up a bit, Naruki learns that Fumino wants to study science while Rizu wants to study literature, which greatly shocks Naruki as this is the opposite of each other's field of expertise. To make matters worse, Naruki quickly realizes that, much like my viewers, Fumino is completely useless at math because she gets overwhelmed by numbers, while Rizu is completely useless at literature because it requires interpretation rather than calculation. But I personally think Rizu should be great at literature because she's already an expert in massive plot. Naruki suggests that the girls should just tutor each other in science and literature, but Fumino and Rizu both respond that they don't know how to dumb down their respective expertise, much to Naruki's annoyance. Feeling like they're wasting their genius, Naruki advises them to just give up and attend universities that cater to their natural talents instead. However, upon hearing this, Rizu stands up and angrily tells Naruki that she's fed up with people always telling her to pursue a life she won't be happy with and claims that Naruki is now abandoning them just like their tutors before. Rizu then storms off, with Fumino soon following her lead. The next day at school, Naruki apologizes to the girls for being ugly and gives them the study materials that he spent all night working on for them, much to their surprise. He then passionately proclaims that he'll never abandon them, no matter what, and promises to make both of them happy. Fumino is completely shocked by this, while Rizu is simply disgusted as they mistakenly believe that Naruki is confessing his love to both of them at the same time. But after clearing up the misunderstanding, the girls thank Naruki for his support, and the three of them head to the library to study together. Once there, Naruki realizes that he's sandwiched between the two most popular girls in school, and that tutoring beautiful anime babes might be harder than he thought. I'm sure that's not the only thing that's hard right now. When Naruki walks Fumino home later that day, he finds her absent-mindedly looking at the stars as if she's got no brain cells left, and learns that she wants to study science to become an astronomer because looking at the stars reminds her of her mother, who passed away. Naruki promises to help Fumino improve at science so she can achieve her dreams, which makes her incredibly happy. Later that same evening, Naruki stumbles upon Rizu playing a card game alone in a park and learns that she actually loves board games but never has anyone to play with, so he offers to play with her. But he's surprised when he absolutely claps her cheeks 20 times in a row. Rizu then admits that she really sucks at any kind of competitive game because she struggles to understand people and what they're thinking. That's why she wants to pass the liberal arts exam and eventually study psychology. Before leaving, Naruki tells Rizu that he'll play with her again anytime she wants, which makes her incredibly happy. The next day at school, Rizu and Fumino visit Naruki's classroom looking for him, which completely shocks Naruki's classmates since he's such a loser. But when he arrives, Rizu and Fumino lean in and whisper to keep what they did last night a secret from everyone else, which sounds very sus, but we all know that Naruki is too scared to touch grass, let alone a woman. Anyways, the next day, Yuka, Naruki's childhood friend, playfully bumps him on the back as a greeting and asks if she could borrow his notebook so she can copy off him. This request clearly annoys Naruki, who refuses despite her begging, as she's been copying off of him since middle school. Surprisingly, however, Yuka is a genius athlete and an outstanding swimmer, nicknamed the Mermaid Princess, but she's unfortunately also an idiot who's failing most of her subjects, which puts her at risk of losing her sports scholarship. So to avoid that outcome, the headmaster asks Naruki to tutor Yuka as well, much to his annoyance. Later on at the school swimming pool, Naruki informs Yuka that he'll be tutoring her from now on, but she surprisingly refuses to be tutored by him and runs away playfully. Fumino and Rizu arrive moments later, only to find Naruki pinning Yuka down while shouting that struggling is useless. Fumino then suddenly bashes Naruki on the head with a fire extinguisher, followed by Rizu expressing her disgust towards Naruki. After clearing up the misunderstanding, Fumino and Rizu introduce themselves to Yuka and explain that Naruki is their tutor. Although Yuka originally didn't want to be tutored by him, she mysteriously changes her mind after hearing this because Yuka has secretly been in love with Naruki since middle school, which he obviously never realized since Naruki is your typical dumb harem protagonist with an ape where his brain should be. The next weekend, Rizu visits Naruki at his home to seek his help with writing a story for an upcoming test. But when she suddenly receives a text from Yuka inviting her to karaoke, Rizu is simply annoyed by this and tells her that she's already busy at Naruki's place. All of a sudden, Yuka immediately shows up covered in sweat and breathing heavily as she says that she also came to study. But while they study, the power suddenly goes out in Naruki's neighborhood, which Yuka finds surprisingly amusing, while Rizu is so frightened due to her fear of the dark that she begins clinging to Naruki. Upon seeing this, Yuka pretends to be scared too, so that she can also cling to him but actually becomes far too embarrassed to fully commit and ends up awkwardly holding on to Naruki's shirt instead. But due to the darkness, they accidentally trip, and Naruki's hands end up studying plot 2. When the power finally returns, Naruki has no idea what he was just squeezing, while Yuka is completely flustered, and Rizu is simply disgusted. The following day, Yuka asks Naruki for help on an upcoming English vocabulary test that she can't afford to fail, so Naruki tells her to just memorize the words needed for the test and explains how she can do so. But Yuka is so bad at studying that she becomes visibly worn out just from listening to him. Fumino also tries to help her but quickly runs out of patience when it's obvious that Yuka is just too dumb. However, Naruki comes up with an ingenious plan to combine studying with swimming, and Yuka eventually manages to score a perfect grade on her test thanks to Naruki's efforts. Afterwards, Yuka shows her gratitude to Naruki by giving him a pencil case, only to later realize that she accidentally gave him her unwashed swimsuit instead while she still has the pencil case. Sometime later, the headmaster orders Naruki to help Fumino and Rizu score average grades or higher on their midterms, a goal that every tutor before him has failed to reach. But after Naruki leaves, the girls walk by the headmaster's office and overhear Kurisu, one of the school's teachers and the girls' former tutor, as she advises the headmaster to remove Naruki as their tutor if the girls fail their midterms. Hearing this greatly demotivates the girls, who are afraid of losing Naruki. So to prepare for the upcoming midterms, Rizu invites Naruki to her family's udon restaurant to help her study. Naruki agrees but soon regrets this decision when Rizu's father threatens Naruki not to get any weird ideas about his daughter. However, Rizu smacks her father on the head and tells him to go back to work, much to her father's dismay, who continues to hold his tongue as he watches Rizu and Naruki study together. Their study session lasts until evening, and as Naruki leaves, Rizu anxiously asks him what will happen if she doesn't do well on the midterm exams. But Naruki pats her head and reassures her that if she fails, they'll just have to study harder for the next test. Rizu is relieved that Naruki doesn't plan to abandon her, but knocks his hand away after a few awkward seconds and tells him not to treat her as a child. On the day of the midterm exams, Rizu thinks back to all the tutors who told her to give up on literature and focus on math and science instead, but upon realizing that Naruki has been the only one who never gave up on her, Rizu gains the confidence needed to finish the test. After the exam, Rizu presents her exam score to Naruki and Yuka, who are both astounded to see that she gained an above-average score. Rizu notes that it's the highest score she's ever gotten in a literature exam, while Naruki is driven to tears of joy by this. Fumino also scores above average in her math exam, and with both girls having passed their midterms, Naruki is allowed to remain their tutor, and the group celebrates together at a restaurant. Sometime later, Fumino is shocked to realize that she somehow gained weight and is depressed as she has no idea what could have caused this. But upon entering the classroom, Yuka and Rizu both shower her with snacks, which she immediately eats without hesitation as she loves snacks too much to resist. That's when she realizes that this is why she gained weight and vows to never eat snacks again. But after dieting for a week and somehow resisting the urge to eat all the snacks that the gang keeps bringing, Fumino is disappointed to learn that she hasn't lost any weight at all. But when Naruki notices that Fumino is too hungry to focus on her studies, he insists that she's already thin and tries to feed her some candy by force. In response, Fumino shows Naruki her stomach and forces him to touch it to prove that she's a fatty, which obviously completely flusters both of them. But while walking Fumino home after school, Naruki learns that Fumino always eats a bunch of snacks late at night because she thinks that studying at night makes her burn more calories. After chastising her for being a complete femino, she stops eating late-night snacks, and her weight returns to normal. The next day at school, Rizu is confronted by Seiko, the president of the science club, who considers herself Rizu's rival despite Rizu not even remembering who she is. Nevertheless, Seiko admits that she's been spying on Rizu and knows that she's in love with Naruki, but Rizu calmly denies this by claiming that wasting energy on something like love is just inefficient. Unconvinced by this, Seiko decides to join Rizu on one of her study sessions with Naruki and watches them intently in order to get a reaction out of Rizu. Seiko starts getting closer to Naruki and asks him all kinds of personal questions. However, Rizu is unbothered by this and continues her studies. Naruki, on the other hand, is confused by Seiko's sudden interest in him and begins to mistakenly believe that she has a crush on him, which she of course adamantly denies. After being kicked out for being too noisy, Naruki comes to realize that Seiko just wants to be Rizu's friend but doesn't know how to interact with her. That's when he whispers to her that he studies with Rizu in the library on Mondays and Wednesdays and that she's welcome to join them anytime. However, Seiko rejects his invitation but says that it's possible she might run into them by chance. The next day, Naruki and Rizu arrive at the library only to find Seiko already waiting there for them, but she tries to pretend as if this is just a coincidence. Sometime later, during an intensive study retreat in the mountains, Fumino notices that for some reason Rizu is constantly staring at Naruki. Rizu even becomes flustered when he tries talking to her, and when she sees him having fun with Fumino and the others, it puts her in a bad mood, prompting her to run outside to blow off some steam, but she soon becomes lost. Miserable, Rizu daydreams about Naruki coming to rescue her as the real Naruki searches for her everywhere despite the pouring rain. He eventually finds her on a cliff and reaches his hand out to help her, but Rizu is embarrassed at being rescued and becomes irritated only to lose her footing and fall into Naruki's arms, accidentally kissing him. The next day, Rizu tries to act like nothing happened between them, even when their teacher forces them to clean the baths together as punishment. After a series of typical animation shenanigans, Rizu apologizes to Naruki for causing so much trouble and assures him that the kiss was just an accident. However, when they return to school, Kurisu, their teacher and former tutor, reveals that she knows all about the kiss and begins questioning whether or not Naruki is truly a suitable tutor for the girls. Fumino becomes worried when she hears snippets of Kurisu and Naruki's conversation and soon barges into the room to defend Naruki, but only seems to make the situation worse. Rizu also barges into the room to defend him, but she's not much help either. Luckily, Kurisu decides to drop the matter and simply warns Naruki to be more prudent in the future. Naruki then spots injuries on Kurisu's hand and realizes that she had also been out looking for Rizu, proving that Kurisu secretly cares about the girls too. Upon leaving her office, Naruki is met by Yuka, Fumino, and Rizu, who are all excited that he made it out scot-free, but as she watches them walk away, Kurisu remains convinced that Naruki is leading the girls to unhappy futures. Several days later, Yuka finds out that Naruki shared a kiss with someone, and upset by this, she decides to confide in Fumino, though she claims she's asking for advice for a friend. Fumino sees through this lie, however, and is surprised to learn that Yuka is in love with Naruki. Nonetheless, she advises Yuka not to give up. As time goes on, Yuka and Rizu's scores both drop dramatically due to their minds being preoccupied by the kiss, which causes Fumino to realize that both Yuka and Rizu have a crush on Naruki. As such, Fumino advises Naruki to try and be considerate of the girls' hearts, but as a typical harem main character with no brain, he misunderstands what Fumino means and believes Yuka and Rizu are in love with someone else. The next day, Fumino accidentally trips into Naruki's arms, which greatly angers Rizu. In an attempt to make up for this, Fumino tries to push Naruki into Rizu's arms but instead accidentally pushes him into Rizu's massive plot cushions, which embarrasses her tremendously. Fumino later learns that Rizu only looked angry because she was wearing old glasses that forced her to squint, and that Rizu never actually saw her hug Naruki. Later that day, Kurisu stumbles on Naruki trying to save a cat from a tree, but when the cat leaps out of the tree, Kurisu catches it and sprained her ankle in the process. Naruki helps her home and discovers that despite being completely professional at school, at home Kurisu is an absolute slob. He insists on tidying up her apartment, and while cleaning, discovers Kurisu's figure skating awards. She explains that she used to be a genius figure skater, but had to give it up as it was not a viable career, which is why she wants the girls to use their talents and she was unable to make use of hers. In response, Naruki claims that he would rather the girls regret failing than not try at all. After he leaves, Kurisu reveals that she was actually extremely flustered at having a man in her apartment for the first time despite appearing calm on the outside. As time passes, a rumor begins to spread that Naruki is dating Fumino due to them spending so much time together. This leads to Naruki becoming the target of Fumino's fan club, who want to make sure he's worthy of their queen's love, but they quickly become disappointed by the lack of romance between the two and decide to abandon the rumor, much to Fumino's relief. After school, Naruki apologizes to Fumino about the rumor of them dating, but she responds by asking if they should just go out for real. She instantly retracts this, however, claiming she was only joking, but Naruki is notably flustered by this, and Fumino thinks to herself that she'd never fall in love with someone her friends already love. During summer break, Naruki decides to attend cram school where he meets Asumi, whom he assumes is a middle schooler because of how petite she is, but in reality, she's a senior studying to get into medical school despite having already failed her entrance exam once. As they spend more time together in class, Naruki and Asumi begin to bond over how tough cram school courses can be. After school, while trying to find the nearby train station, two suspicious men grab Naruki and guide him to a maid cafe named High Stage, where he's shocked to find Asumi working. Asumi is equally embarrassed to have Naruki learn of her job, but she needs the money to pay for medical school. Just as he's about to leave, Naruki sees her study materials and realizes that she's terrible at science. The other maids then decide to bribe him with free drinks every day in order for him to tutor Asumi in science, which he does for several days. After some time, Naruki introduces the study group to Asumi, who is immediately adored by the girls due to her petite stature, but the next day, all three girls begin attending cram school to keep tabs on Naruki's relationship with Asumi. Later that night, Kurisu leaves a social gathering with her coworkers and on her way home catches Naruki heading into the High Stage cafe. As she tries to admonish Naruki from entering such a place, Asumi appears and reveals that she was actually a former student of Kurisu. While fighting over Naruki, Kurisu loses her grip and falls backward, injuring one of the maids and forcing Kurisu to temporarily replace her. Asumi then has Kurisu practice her introductions with Naruki, which mortifies her but amuses him. Throughout the night, Naruki helps Kurisu with her duties even when she insists on doing it, which makes Kurisu develop a newfound respect for him as she recalls the time the girls barged into her office to defend him. At the end of the night, Kurisu accidentally gets drunk on only one sip of alcohol, and Naruki has no choice but to carry her home. The next day, Kurisu runs into Naruki again, and the two walk home together. Kurisu reminisces about never being able to have a social life when she was younger due to her skating, so Naruki buys her some ice cream to cheer her up, only for Fumino and Rizu to also appear at the ice cream shop moments later. Naruki and Kurisu then hide in the nearby bushes to avoid being seen by the two, but when Fumino and Rizu show no intentions of wanting to leave, a desperate Naruki decides to pretend that he and Kurisu are a kissing couple, causing the two girls to flee in embarrassment without recognizing him. After an eventful day, they finally make it to Kurisu's apartment only to be spotted by Asumi, who delights in embarrassing them both mercilessly. On the night of a summer festival, Naruki bumps into Fumino and Yuruka, who are enjoying the festival together in their beautiful yukatas, which Naruki compliments them on. Fumino then claims that she has to go somewhere and do something, and leaves Yuka alone with Naruki. While they walk through the festival together, they come across a food stall run by Rizu's family. Seeing that Rizu is struggling, Naruki helps her deliver food while Yuka helps Rizu's father cook. Once they're finished with their deliveries, Rizu returns to the food stall and Naruki is left alone. It's then that he notices a masked Kurisu collecting a bunch of prizes at a shooting gallery. Kurisu, surprised to see Naruki, attempts to run away, but trips and hurts herself, instead requiring him to carry her to a medical tent, which is unsurprisingly run by Asumi and her father, and Asumi decides to let the flustered Naruki treat Kurisu himself. Later, both Fumino and Naruki accidentally miss the last train home, and with no place to go, head to a nearby inn. When they learn that there's only one room with a single bed available, they convince the innkeeper they're just siblings, but let's be honest, that never stopped anime main characters before. In their room, it immediately gets awkward as they both try to distract themselves from erotic thoughts by talking with each other. This doesn't work, however, so they decide to do some stargazing instead. Naruki admires Fumino for having a dream, whereas he has no idea what his dream is. As they fall asleep hand in hand, Fumino reassures him she'll be there to support him when he figures his dream out. The next morning, the two take the train home and are both notably unnerved due to waking up in each other's arms. Later that summer, Rizu feels confident that all her studying is starting to pay off, but when she sees that she got an E on a practice exam, she tells the girls about her low grade, who all mistakenly assume that she is talking about her bra size and are shocked that Rizu dropped from F cups to E cups. Rizu then asks them what grades they got, and despite Fumino being too embarrassed to answer, Asumi and Yuka happily state that they have B cups and D cups, which forces a flustered Fumino to reveal that she has AA cups. In response, Rizu expresses her envy of Fumino getting such a high grade, which angers Fumino as she believes Rizu is mocking her flatness. After the misunderstanding is cleared, the girls continue to talk about their chests until Asumi mentions that all men love big milk bags, including Naruki, who she claims is secretly a man of culture. Later that day, while being tutored by Naruki, Rizu can't stop thinking about Asumi's comment and wonders if Naruki truly is secretly a huge plot lover. Suddenly, Naruki asks her about the E grade she got on a test, which Rizu misunderstands, thinking he is boldly asking about her plot size. She responds that she used to be an F but is a G now. Naruki immediately begins to panic as he didn't even know that getting G as a grade was possible. Despite this, he reassures her that a G isn't so bad as it simply means she has more room to grow. Rizu is shocked that Naruki wants her huge assets to grow even more and begins to believe that he really is secretly a cultured man after all. Rizu decides to accept him as he is and offers to let Naruki touch her plot in order to make him happy, just as her furious father arrives to confront Naruki about this. Once the misunderstanding is cleared up, Rizu is embarrassed about the whole thing, but is still determined to improve her grades. Before they leave, however, Rizu catches Naruki stealing glances at her massive assets, as he simply can't believe she wears something as massive as G-cups. The next day, Naruki goes to the girls as usual, but trouble ensues when Fumino accidentally calls Naruki by his first name, and the girls demand to know when they became so close. This was a habit she picked up spending the night at an inn with Naruki, where they pretended to be siblings by using each other's first names, but she refuses to let Naruki tell the other girls about this even though nothing happened. Wanting to deepen their friendship as well, Rizu threatens Naruki to address her by her first name, or she'll call him Mr. Horndog. Eventually, the group decides to call everyone by their first names. The next weekend, Asumi's job offers housekeeping services to customers, and Naruki is hired to accomplish this task. The first house they're assigned to clean is surprisingly Kurisu's apartment, which embarrasses her greatly as she doesn't want her students to see her lack of cleanliness. She offers Asumi some money to leave, but Asumi refuses because she takes pride in her work. Desperate, Kurisu pulls Naruki into her apartment and forces him to clean everything up, then lets Asumi inside, who's immediately annoyed that there's nothing left for her to clean. Meanwhile, Naruki lays on the floor exhausted. The next place they're tasked with cleaning is Yuka's home, who, upon opening the door, is shocked to see that Asumi is a maid and that she's with Naruki. Not wanting Naruki to see her messy house, Yuka frantically does all the chores herself, even cooks them a meal. Despite enjoying it, Asumi is once again annoyed she wasn't able to do her job. Their final customer is Fumino, also surprised to see that Asumi is a maid and Naruki is with her. Like Yuka, Fumino doesn't want them to enter her messy house and tries to bribe them, but when that fails, Fumino has no choice but to lock herself in and order udon from Rizu's family shop. When Rizu arrives with the food, she's also surprised to see Asumi is a maid. The three of them eat noodles together, and Fumino says she doesn't need cooking help since she is food. Happy to help, Asumi invites herself to Naruki's house and cleans it for him, which surprises him. Naruki's younger siblings take a liking to Asumi and ask her to marry their older brother, which she teasingly agrees to. After cleaning, she offers Naruki a free cleaning as gratitude for helping her today and continues to playfully flirt, which he tries to resist. The next day at school, Fumino accidentally falls asleep in Kurisu's class, which infuriates her greatly. That night, Kurisu spends all evening working on an exam for tomorrow's class, but when her laptop's battery dies, she has to start everything over from scratch and ends up not getting any sleep. This makes her extra grumpy the next day, which causes the students to focus twice as hard to avoid her wrath during the exam. However, Kurisu briefly falls asleep and is immediately woken up from banging her head against the blackboard, with Naruki seemingly being the only student who witnesses this. During her lunch break, she continues to power through her sleepiness to stay awake, But this becomes increasingly difficult when later that day, she's forced to listen to the principal's boring speech. Just as she's about to fall asleep, however, Naruki loudly fakes a sneeze to help her stay awake. After barely managing to stay awake all day, she finally arrives home only to discover that she lost her key somewhere. While frantically looking around town for it, she accidentally runs into Naruki, who decides to help her out. But after hours of searching everywhere for the key, Kurisu realizes that it was actually in her handbag the whole time. The two then return to Kurisu's home, who unsurprisingly passes out in the entrance the moment she steps foot inside. With no other choice, Naruki embarrassingly carries his teacher to her bed and decides to clean her apartment as well while he's at it. The next morning, Kurisu has no memory of what happened, but she's proud that she was somehow able to get herself in bed and even clean her entire apartment. Later the same morning, Rizu accidentally cuts off her bangs due to her father barging into the bathroom and startling her. She's mostly unfazed by this, however, and still acts normal around Fumino and Yuka when they see her new haircut, but she immediately becomes flustered when Naruki arrives and refuses to let him see her face. At school, she decides to put on a weird mask to keep her new haircut hidden from Naruki, even though she doesn't understand why she's so embarrassed by the thought of him seeing her. But when Naruki begins to believe that Rizu is hiding her face because she hates him, Fumino decides to help clear up the misunderstanding by forcibly removing Rizu's mask. Rizu then embarrassingly waits for Naruki to comment on her new haircut, but he just says that he doesn't notice anything different about her, which even annoys Yuka and Fumino. The next day at school, Seiko invites Rizu to go shopping with her for a new pencil case, and Rizu agrees, which completely surprises her. She tries to contain her excitement and play it cool, but fails miserably. Unbeknownst to Rizu, Seiko spends the entire night drafting an itinerary for them to go to various popular dating spots for couples. The next day, however, her plan is ruined when they inadvertently run into Naruki. Believing that Rizu would have a better time shopping with him, Seiko decides to let the two enjoy the rest of the day together while she remains alone and reminisces about her middle school days, where her classmates were jealous of her perfect test scores, which isolated her from everyone else until she met Rizu, who didn't care what her classmates thought of her, a quality which Seiko greatly admired. This inspired her to attend the same high school as Rizu, but it wasn't until her third year that she mustered up the courage to actually talk to her. Suddenly, Naruki interrupts her flashback and confronts Seiko about ditching Rizu, as he knows that she was looking forward to spending the day with her. Seiko then admits how much she admires Rizu, which Rizu overhears, but Rizu admits that hearing Seiko's praise makes her happy. She then asks Seiko to continue helping her shop for a pencil case, which makes her so happy that she accidentally trips and falls right onto Rizu's airbags, unwillingly angering Rizu while exposing herself to the very fortunate Naruki. Sometime later, Fumino convinces Rizu to visit a salon owned by the eccentric M. Karasuma, who gives her a complete makeover. Afterwards, she meets up with Naruki at the library to study with him, but he doesn't recognize her and has no idea who this stranger brazen enough to sit right next to him is. When she sees him acting weird, Rizu touches Naruki's head to see if he has a fever, which immediately confirms in his mind that this beautiful stranger is aggressively trying to hit on him. Flustered by this situation, he texts Rizu to hurry up and come, which she reads and misinterprets to mean hurrying up on a homework question that she's struggling with. Naruki then ends up getting more and more flustered throughout the day as Rizu asks him questions about his personal life and gets uncomfortably close to him. At the end of the day, as they're heading home, Naruki has no idea why this beautiful lady is still following him, but he applauds her assertiveness. Meanwhile, Rizu thinks back to something the salon owner said about deepening one's friendship with men and boldly invites Naruki to come back to her place. Naruki obviously misunderstands this as an invitation to do the dirty and agrees to go along with her, but his dreams are quickly crushed when he sees Rizu's dad and realizes the true identity of the beautiful lady he spent all day with. The next day, Naruki studies English with Yuka, and despite extensively studying vocabulary and grammar, Yuka still has no confidence in speaking, so Naruki decides that they must converse only in English for the whole day. On their way home, two English-speaking foreigners stop to ask Yuka for directions, which she is surprisingly able to explain to them with a mixture of broken English and gestures. Afterwards, the men invite Yuka to a nearby barbecue because they think she's so cute, but she becomes too flustered to know how to properly turn them down. Naruki arrives moments later to protect Yuka, which leads the men to question his relationship with her. Naruki does his best to answer them in English, but his mispronounced answer makes it sound like Yuka is his girlfriend. The two men congratulate him on getting such a cute girlfriend and wish him good luck before leaving. Meanwhile, Yuka tries to piece together what Naruki said, and when she realizes that he called her his girlfriend, she flees in embarrassment. Sometime later, at Naruki's house, he tutors Fumino in algebra, while his little sister leers at her the whole time. Before Fumino leaves, Naruki gives her a bag with a special present inside for her birthday. When Fumino then checks to see what her present is, she finds out that it's a frilly new bra, which turns out to be the wrong thing that Naruki was supposed to give her, as he had instead planned to give her a special pen for left-handed people. Despite this, Fumino wears the new bra to school the next day, with extra padding to make up for the bigger size of the bra. Naruki then approaches her, and the two briefly talk about her present, but both of them are unaware that Fumino got the wrong gift, which causes further misunderstandings. Later that day, Yuka gives Fumino oven mitts as a late birthday present, while Riza gives her some new chopsticks. But when Yuka then asks what Naruki gave Fumino for her birthday, she silences him by any means necessary to cover the fact that he gave her a bra. Confused by her reaction, Naruki takes her out in the hallway, and the two quickly clear up the misunderstanding, followed by Naruki apologizing profusely. But his statement about her breast size causes Fumino's heart to skip a beat. The next weekend, Kirisa decides to go to a local bathhouse, but on the way there, she runs into Asumi, Naruki, and his twin siblings, who instantly take a liking to Kirisu and ask her to marry their brother, which infuriates her. Once inside the bathhouse, the twins commit a mischievous act by stealing Kirisu's underwear. Meanwhile, Kirisu and Asumi share a sauna together and talk about Naruki's good traits. After they leave the sauna, Naruki's little sister begins pestering Kirisu to marry her brother, which annoys her greatly. But when the little girl begins to cry, Kirisu agrees to marry Naruki in order to please her. Naruki's sister then runs to tell her brother, causing Kirisu to slip on a bar of soap while trying to chase after her. Because of this, Naruki is forced to carry her out of the bathhouse until she wakes up moments later and chastises him for his indecency. Naruki's little sister defends him, however, and in the process accidentally pulls Kirisu's towel off, embarrassingly exposing everything to Naruki. At the end of the day, Naruki and Asumi explain the situation to Kirisu, who forgives them in response and sheepishly apologizes too. After they part ways, Kirisu reveals to Asumi that she's going commando under her suit, which causes Naruki to realize that his twin siblings still have Kirisu's underwear. Sometime later, Naruki learns that he is at risk of failing physical education because of his lack of athleticism, so he agrees to take extra swimming lessons. To his surprise, the usual swim coach has to leave, and she asks Kirisu to teach in her stead, which she agrees to despite being annoyed by this situation. Meanwhile, Yuka tries to help Naruki improve at swimming, but he unfortunately has the swimming talent of a rock, so Kirisu is forced to get in the pool and help him learn the basics. In the showers after class, Yuka admits to Kirisu that she is nervous about losing her next competition, but Kirisu gives her some advice and reassures her that everything will work out if she believes in herself and her training. Thanks to that advice, Yuka easily wins the tournament, and because of her great talent, the headmaster offers Yuka a chance to study abroad at an Australian university. Though she wants to go, she wonders if long-distance relationships can work and ultimately decides that while she would like to study abroad, she still wants to keep this a secret from Naruki for the time being. Realizing that she would need to speak fluent English to study in Australia, she asks Naruki to tutor her even more. Sometime later, the school holds a parent-teacher conference, but Fumino's father does not attend, despite Fumino hesitantly leaving an invitation for him on the kitchen table. Suddenly, a university professor appears and begs Rizu to attend his mathematics course rather than pursue literature. Surprised by this, Fumino reveals that the professor is actually her father, Rei, with whom she has a strained relationship. Fumino then restrains her father to allow Rizu to escape from him. Angered by this, Rei tells his daughter that if she insists on pursuing foolish dreams, he'll kick her out of the house. Without much thought, Fumino agrees to this, and Naruki allows her to stay with him for the time being. That night, Fumino remembers that her mother was a mathematics genius, and that after she died, Fumino tried to do math just like her but couldn't. As such, her father became upset and slapped her. The next day at school, Yuka notices that Fumino has the same underwear on from the previous day, so Fumino has Naruki help her fetch some clothes from her house, only for her father to arrive home earlier than expected. Not wanting to be seen by him, the two hide together in a very cramped cupboard and wait for him to leave. Once he's gone, Fumino discovers her mother's old laptop that Rei had hidden after she died. They find that it only has one folder on it and that it's password protected, which means that Rei has not read it either. With only one chance left to crack the password, Fumino becomes determined to someday crack it. The next day, Naruki awakens to Fumino preparing breakfast for the both of them, and to both of their surprise, the food is edible, but Naruki has no idea what he's actually eating. Despite this, Fumino is happy that she was able to feed Naruki without poisoning him. Throughout the rest of the day, Fumino fails all of her chores around the house and heavily relies on Naruki for help. After helping Naruki with his bath, she passes out on top of him due to fatigue. Naruki then brings her to bed, and when she wakes up later, he invites her to go to the top of a nearby mountain where the stars are extra visible. That night, after he hears her talk so passionately about stars, he advises her to share this passion with her father, but Fumino is hesitant that he'll understand. Not wanting to run away forever, however, Fumino decides to confront her father at their residence, but he remains opposed to her pursuing what he considers to be a foolish dream. In response, Fumino gives a passionate speech about astronomy, which reminds Rei of Fumino's mother, but it's still not enough to change his mind. So Fumino decides to show her father what was on her mom's laptop, which he thought was a math thesis. In actuality, it was a video message in which she confesses that the math thesis was a lie and that she was never a mathematical genius but hopes that Fumino someday pursues something she truly cares about. Fumino then goes outside and meets with Naruki while her father continues to watch the video, where he sees a young Fumino visiting her mother and claiming that if she finds a new star, she'll name it after her father. It's also revealed that the password to the folder was Rei's name. Back to Naruki and Fumino, the two talk for a while and enjoy a pretty romantic night together. The following day, Fumino and Rei attend a parent-teacher conference together, and Rei finally gives his daughter permission to pursue astronomy. Later on, Naruki reveals that his mother had secretly met with Rei to give him the courage to reconcile with Fumino. After having reconciled with his daughter, Rei confronts Naruki about his relationship with Fumino and assumes that the two are dating, which greatly embarrasses both of them. The next day, Yuka asks Naruki what he plans to major in at college, but he realizes that he's been too preoccupied with his studies to have thought of that. Later on, as the school prepares for a festival, a rumor begins circulating that any two people who touch during the fireworks will end up together forever. Meanwhile, Kirisu decides that for her part in the festival, she'll do a lecture on the Roman Empire, and to make it more exciting, the other teachers decide to put her in costume. Elsewhere, Fumino is coerced into playing Sleeping Beauty in her class play. Once the school festival begins, Naruki discovers that Yuka and the swim team will be performing an idol show, but Yuka's costume was unfortunately delivered to the wrong room. Afterwards, Naruki finds Kirisu wearing the idol costume, which she mistakenly believed was for her lecture on the Roman Empire. He attempts to take it off her so he can return it to Yuka, but the zipper becomes stuck, so Kirisu has no choice but to perform as an idol on stage instead of Yuka. Surprisingly, she does a good job mimicking Yuka's dance moves while lip-syncing. Meanwhile, Fumino marches around the festival, furious that no one will tell her who is supposed to be playing the prince to her Sleeping Beauty. Yuka then joins the performance alongside Kirisu with an outfit that Naruki managed to create for her from memory. After the show, everyone celebrates their success until Naruki foolishly pulls a loose thread on Kirisu's already damaged costume, and everything immediately comes apart. Afterwards, Fumino's fan club promises Naruki that they will help sell Rizuzu Dawn if he helps them with their play. This causes Naruki to mistakenly put on a cat costume, which the teachers had gotten for Kirisu to prank her. Asumi then sees Fumino being led to the stage and realizes that Naruki is in the costume, so she decides to show him a shortcut when the fan club is unable to find Naruki. However, the headmaster announces that the play will be entirely improvised and asks for a volunteer prince from the audience. All the boys rush the stage to volunteer to be Fumino's prince, forcing the fan club to protect Fumino in a mad brawl. Naruki makes his way on the stage and manages to save Fumino from injury, but is immediately declared the prince. To his surprise, Fumino kisses his mask on the lips, unaware that she is actually smooching Naruki. After he flees the stage and gets changed, Fumino is revealed to believe that it was actually Asumi that she kissed in the costume. But when Asumi denies this, Fumino becomes incredibly flustered as she has no idea who she smooched. At the end of the festival, the time for the rumor jinx finally arrives, and just as the fireworks are about to be launched, Fumino, Yuka, Rizu, Naruki, Kirisu, and Asumi are all pushed into each other, creating a 6-person pileup. But when the fireworks fail to ignite and therefore the rumored jinx doesn't come true, Naruki is helped up to his feet by a girl just as the fireworks go off for real this time. However, Naruki has no idea whose hand he's holding during the fireworks. Sometime much later, Naruki reveals that he plans to go to college to become a teacher, and thanks to Naruki's tutoring, the girls all pass their desired subjects. Yuka is accepted to the Australian University on a sports scholarship, Fumino passes mathematics and begins studying astronomy, Rizu passes literature and begins studying psychology, and Asumi is accepted into medical school. After more time passes, the gang says goodbye to Yuka before she boards her flight to Australia, but Naruki is late. When he finally arrives, he ends up tripping and is helped up to his feet by Yuka, who lends him a hand, suggesting that was her hand he touched at the festival and that she's the one Naruki was jinxed to end up with. In the manga, however, the final chapter shows alternate realities where all the girls, including various secondary characters, end up touching Naruki during the festival's fireworks, and each girl is given her own special ending with Naruki, most of which end in marriage.